Business is in session at the Canadian Centre for Guide Dogs. In fact, it never really stopped.
Oh, good girlie. Well done. Yay!
But how these guide dogs are trained has changed a lot. Trainer Ian Hadlam is letting 2-year-old Dahlia lead him around this fake construction site. Over the past year, when the pandemic has made the streets off-limit, Hadlam and other canine students like Fawn have improvised.
Find the button. Hop up. Find the button. Good girl.
COVID lockdowns have forced trainers to think of creative ways to prepare the pooches for a world where traveling, shopping, and dining are possible.
All of that we want to expose them to as much as we can safely so that they think it's just a normal part of life and it doesn't throw them for a loop when they're guiding through it.
So, dogs have taken field trips here to the unusually quiet Ottawa airport. They've worked on escalators, etiquette, and outside, how to keep an eye open for crosswalks. The Canadian National Institute for the Blind runs another guide dog training centre. President Diane Bergeron says most of their puppies come from outside Canada, but they've been blocked by closed borders.
Nor can I just take a dog from a rescue organization and train it to be a guide dog.
Bergeron says the biggest challenge has been exposing young dogs to crowds, like on a jammed subway platform at rush hour or a day at a festival.
That's one piece that worries me as a guide dog handler myself. I'm a little bit worried that when our dogs get into those situations moving forward, they're not going to have enough of that training.
Bergeron says if need be, the animals will get some extra lessons. But both guide dog agencies say even though they'll have been trained in a pandemic, the dogs will be capable of figuring out the new normal whenever it arrives.
Vaccinations are underway in Ontario, but in the meantime, some employers are using new technology to add to their pandemic arsenal. Pearson International Airport employees, some of them have been given COVID safety alert devices, similar to devices that created quite a bit of stir in Ontario last month. It's wearable technology that alerts users if they're getting too close to one another and can also be used for contact tracing. Similar to pagers, Pearson employees can wear the clip-on devices on their belts or coats, and if they come within 2 meters of another employee wearing one, the device will begin vibrating and flashing. When the alert goes off, the information is also recorded in a log so that contact tracing is possible if an employee does test positive for COVID-19. The GTAA has invested $200,000 in the project for the development, design, and deployment of the devices. Their announcement comes just weeks after the provincial government invested $2.5 million for a tech company to develop similar devices, wearable bracelets that also notify users when they are too close and can be used for contact tracing. The government says they were designed to mitigate the spread of COVID in workplaces and settings where smartphone use is limited or prohibited. But the investment sparking outrage at the time, with taxpayers calling it a waste of money that could be better spent elsewhere.
What's really happening as we roll a year into this pandemic is there's this slow creep of these kind of devices coming in without a lot of really, really rigorous public debate.
And with more devices rolling out, privacy concerns are emerging.
I worry very, very much that we're losing ground in terms of, our right to freedom and privacy. And when this pandemic ends, I wonder how easy it's going to be to walk that back and reclaim what we've lost.
The GTAA says their device doesn't track the location of any employees.
Wash your hands well and often. Cover your coughs and sneezes.
That message delivered almost a year ago, still relentless today.
Don't lose patience right now, just as the vaccine programs are underway.
That vaccine program Dr. Tam hopes will break this crisis phase in Canada, ending lockdowns and harsh restrictions possibly by the summer. But here's the difficult news. Masks, physical distancing, all those personal measures Canadians have been following, Tam says are here to stay for many months to come, even after the bulk of the population is vaccinated.
For many reasons, because some of the uncertainties that we said about the variants, but other countries also don't have the vaccine as fast as we do. So these viruses, can come in invisible ways.
It's not clear when Canada will lift its tough border and travel restrictions. But Canada's health minister is already in talks with G7 ministers about the possibility of vaccine certificates to show proof of immunity.
The intent is to coordinate, yes, because you can imagine the confusion in international travel if there's different certifications that are required.
Haidu told Rosemary Barton Live all countries are still grappling with that cohesion and questioning if those vaccinated can still transmit COVID to others.
If you still contract a mild form of COVID, are you just as infectious as you were if you weren't vaccinated? And those questions continue to evolve.
As the government looks ahead, some doctors are only now starting to reflect on the trauma of the past year.
One of my friends who's an ER physician, she calls it scars on your soul. Every name, every patient who's suffered, who's died, even if you didn't know their name, your soul is marked by it.
She expects as Canadians start to process that, a tsunami of grief is still to come.
More Canadians are becoming the victims of fraud during this pandemic, according to new surveys. And it has been a nightmare for one Toronto man after a thief forged a check and withdrew $30,000 from his bank account. Despite notifying his bank within 2 days, getting the money back has been a long and stressful process, highlighting the rights of bank customers in this country, as well as their responsibility. His entire life savings cleaned out in a day. He noticed the money was missing from his account just 2 days after it was withdrawn.
Transaction, I could see an image of the check, and as soon as I saw that, I recognized that that was certainly not my signature or writing.
And notably, he says the money was withdrawn on the same day the check was presented to the bank.
I certainly wasn't even aware that one could just walk into a bank with a check that, that sum and be able to just deposit it or withdraw it in cash. So that was the other thing that was quite shocking.
Despite notifying his bank within 2 days, the funds were not immediately returned, and for weeks he had to follow up with hours-long calls. The funds weren't recovered until almost 2 months later. In a statement, RBC says, "We realize that any time a client is impacted by fraud or scams, it can be a difficult and stressful situation for them. In all instances, we work with the client throughout the process and keep them informed, as we did in this case."
Truth is that the financial system is lopsided in favor of large institutions.
Lots of questions on how, where, and when those over 80 can get vaccinated in the Greater Toronto Area, as public health units in different regions have come up with their own rollout plans recently. Although not yet in Toronto, this means some seniors can get vaccinated ahead of the provincial online booking portal launching on March 15th. But the process is a bit bumpy and confusing to some.
We want to get our vaccine today. I did not know we had to make appointments.
This senior in Brampton showed up today to William Osler Health System's vaccine clinic after repeatedly failing to get through the phone line to book an appointment. Peel Region announced yesterday that Brampton's online booking portal was ready, with appointments to get the shot starting today.
No answer. And I'm very upset about this because we are seen as I pay my tax, we're not supposed to go through this.
For both Peel and York Region, no walk-in appointments are accepted. In Peel, you can call or go online to book a vaccine appointment. In York, the process can only be completed on the internet. One expert says the system has its share of problems.
For the people who might have a harder time accessing the booking system if they're elderly or they don't use technology as easily or as readily as other people, what's going to be the way to help them make sure they get access to the vaccine?
For those who do get through to the website, getting an appointment is proving to be challenging. Spots are filling up quickly. Yesterday, York Region's online booking system confirmed 20,000 appointments across all 5 vaccination clinics on its first day of operation. On its second day, the vaccine clinic remains busy, but some are happy with the process.
No lineups, nope, not at all. Straight through. It was wonderful.
Toronto does not have an online vaccine booking site right now. It's waiting until the centralized provincial online portal launches on March 15th.
In Toronto, it's not actually just public health who will be vaccinating. All of the hospitals will play a role. Community health centers will play a role. And so some of those places may have their own booking systems as well, too.
However, some Toronto hospitals are starting to book appointments. Earlier today, Sunnybrook announced it was launching a COVID hub. It said residents 70 and older can start pre-registering, adding to the confusion that just changed to specify North Toronto residents who are 80 80 and older. Sunnybrook is cautioning that pre-registering does not guarantee a vaccine appointment. We reached out to Sunnybrook. They say the website was changed because they originally misinterpreted Toronto Public Health's direction. They are now accepting pre-registrations for people aged 80 and over. They say the people 70 and over who are able to register will get an invitation when those over 70 are eligible to get vaccinated regardless of where they live.
At the Heatherington Community Centre, the south end of the city, and this is the first vulnerable neighborhood vaccination program that we started today, vaccinating today 150 seniors over the age of 80 who live in high-risk areas where there's a higher proportion of COVID-19. So it's a really important, exciting, and historic day for us here in Ottawa. This is the first time we've been able to get needles in arms of our vulnerable population, those over 80. Obviously, there's been a higher proportion of senior citizens that have lost their lives and have contracted COVID-19. So the sooner we can get to that population over 80, and then we drop it to over 70, and then over 60, and then hopefully by September, if the supply continues to be as positive as it has been in the last couple of days, we'll be able to get everyone in Ottawa vaccinated by the end of September.
I woke up this morning and I thought, this is the day. I'm going to get my shot today, and I'm on my way. I was able to eat my breakfast early, and then I thought, she arrived on the scene and we both discussed how great a day it was going to be, how privileged I feel, really, at my age, and that I've heard to, she booked it for me and arranged everything, and here I am. Well, actually, when she made the appointment on Monday, she came off the phone, she says, oh, I got an appointment for you. And I said, great, when? She said, Friday. I said, which Friday? She says, this Friday. I could not believe it. I was so relieved.
You can go to ottawapublichealth.ca and has all the lists of the clinics that are coming up. So the next 3 days we're here at Heatherington, then we go into another community next week, and that information can be obtained by ottawapublichealth.ca. And you can also punch in your postal code to see if you're one of the eligible areas to go into. And if you are, then you can either register online if you have that capacity, or you can call a phone number.
Concerns are being raised about conditions at federally mandated quarantine hotels. The hotels were part of the government's plan to reduce travel and the transmission of variants, but people are questioning their safety. With more on this, I want to bring in Christina Teixeira. She's an Ontario resident who stayed at a quarantine hotel after returning from her father's funeral in Portugal. Christina, good morning. Glad you could be with us. Our condolences for the loss of your dad. I actually want to ask you about that and the fact that you were grieving and then you have to go to a hotel to quarantine. Did you think that you should be exempt for that?
Well, thank you, Mercy, for having me on, and thank you for the condolences. With all this, we've really yet to grieve his loss and everything that we've been through. So we were fully expecting to do the quarantine in a hotel as per the mandated stay or guide. We tried for days while we were away, while dealing with all of this. We tried for days, for hours, to try and get through to on that line that was given to book a hotel. We couldn't. We just couldn't. So when we arrived, we knew that we would eventually go and try to have to book a hotel. However, before we left, we were told by Health Canada that there was an exemption under compassionate reasons that we could apply for. So we applied on this form, but this form is meant for non-Canadian residents coming in to Canada for either a funeral or some sort of a health treatment, etc. They could bypass the hotel stay. So we applied for that. We received a response to say that we were Canadians. We did not need this form, so therefore the form was closed. My daughter further contacted them and asked, well, what can we do? We're going under the same compassionate reasons. This is not a holiday. This was not a pleasure trip. We had no choice. Not only was it to attend our father's funeral, it was to actually plan it. We had to literally put my father in refrigeration until we got there because there was nobody to take care of the actual funeral. So She sent an email off to the email that was given to her, and to this day, we still haven't received anything. There was no way. We even spoke to the girls' manager on the phone, and she said, if you do not go to the hotel, there is a fine between $3,700 to $750,000. We were under duress. We were tired. We couldn't fight anymore. It was just at the time, okay, fine, let's just do this. They gave us a number that went directly to the Crown Plaza Hotel because they knew that there was availability there. So we contacted them. They gave us a price for per night of $369, and a minimum stay was 3 days. And as per the public health official, she says, yeah, you must book a minimum of 3 days. We said, well, what if we get the results back earlier from the COVID test that we were going to take next? And she said, that's up to, you to figure out. So
wow.
We went through the piece. We went through we did the COVID test. We waited for an hour and a half in the waiting area at the airport for the shuttle to come. Nobody showed up. Finally, the security manager came over after we had already called the hotel, and the security guard said, call the hotel. There's people here waiting to get there. Security manager came and told us, take a cab, take your own car, take an Uber. It doesn't matter. Just, get to the hotel because the shuttle's not coming.
It was 3 hours outside in line for 2, and then another hour inside.
Susan Miller and Paul Binkowski of Bowie had an appointment just after 12:30, but say they and hundreds of other people spent hours standing outside in the cold waiting at the vaccination site at the Prince George's Sports and Learning Center.
And there were people outside waiting with you for 2 hours in the cold.
Yes.
Yeah. Seniors, people with walkers.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just really felt for the people with the walkers. That was awful that they were standing there.
Prince George's County Executive Angela Olsenbrooks had promised after similar problems weeks ago that she would fix the issue, and that if there was a line, seniors could wait in their cars instead of outside in the elements.
My husband and I haven't even been in a store in a year. We haven't seen our families. We've been totally isolated. So suddenly to be thrown in an environment with hundreds of people made me feel very unsafe.
Prince George's is far from alone. There have been long lines in Montgomery, Fairfax, and D.C. Many jurisdictions have been using web-based software called PrepMod to schedule appointments. Google it, and you will find more than 1,000 news stories about problems. It's created so much trouble in Prince George's that the county plans to replace it by the end of the week. And even on Wednesday, the wait at the health department vaccination site was much shorter.
Very happy.
The Bowie couple did finally get their vaccine.
Yeah, I felt like running up and down the street yelling, I got my second shot when we came home.
Yeah.
This is a 2021 Arctic Terrier production.